I've always trusted the woods. As a child, I spent every summer at my grandfather's cabin in the Adirondacks, and the forest was my playground, my sanctuary, my second home. I knew its sounds, its rhythms, its moods. I could read the moss on the north side of a tree and find my way back before dusk. I knew where the deer bedded down, where the blackberries grew thickest in July, and which hollows held the deepest snow in winter. When my marriage fell apart, I packed a single suitcase and drove north without a plan. The cabin was the only place that had ever felt like home, and I thought the trees would heal me as they always had. I was wrong. The woods hadn't changed. But I had overlooked something. Something that had been standing there, waiting, for over 40 years. I found it on the third morning of my return, half a mile northeast of the cabin, on a ridge I'd walked past 100 times before. The stairs rose out of the forest floor like they'd been pushed up from below by some buried hand. Stone steps, perfectly cut and fitted, climbed upward at a steady incline, and then stopped. There was nothing at the top. No platform, no doorway, no ruin. Just a clean, abrupt end where the 12th step met empty air, as though whoever built them had simply given up, or as though the structure they were meant to serve had been erased from existence. The stones were weathered but not crumbling. Lichen grew in patches along the edges, but the treads themselves were worn smooth, concave from the passage of countless feet. I stood at the base for a long time, trying to make sense of it. Old logging stairs? No. Loggers used rough-hewn timber, not dressed stone. A survey marker? Unlikely at this elevation, with no line of sight to any peak. A forgotten folly from some long-gone hermit's estate? Possible, but the nearest road was 3 miles of deer trail. Everything heavy would have had to come in by hand or sled. I walked around the staircase, examining it from every angle. The stones were fitted together with a precision that reminded me of Inca masonry. No mortar, yet the gaps were barely wide enough for a knife blade. I ran my fingers over the surface. It was cold despite the morning sun, and smooth in a way that felt deliberate, almost ceremonial. Something about the arrangement bothered me, and it took me a full minute to realize what. The steps faced northwest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the cabin's narrow bed, listening to the wind push through the pine needles, and I kept thinking about the stairs. Why northwest? Most structures in the Adirondacks aligned with roads, property lines, or the sun's path. Northwest meant nothing practical. It felt intentional, directional, like a finger pointing towards something I couldn't see. I got up before dawn, made coffee I didn't drink, and hiked back to the ridge. This time I approached from above, scrambling up the slope behind the stairs, hoping to see them from a new angle. From the top, they looked even stranger, a ladder to nowhere, anchored in dirt and roots. I asked about them in town that afternoon. Old Miller at the hardware store went quiet when I described the location. He wiped his hands on his apron and said, "Those are the ascender's steps. You leave 'em alone." That was all. The woman at the diner, a local named Helen whose family had been in the county for 6 generations, gave me moreover a plate of eggs I hadn't ordered. "They've been there as long as anyone's been here," she said. "Longer. The old-timers used to say the stairs don't go up. They go down. You climb them at dusk, you're not climbing into the sky, you're climbing into something underneath." I should have stopped there. Any sane person would have. But the divorce had hollowed me out, and I think I needed something to believe in, even if that something was dread. I needed the world to feel large and mysterious again, to have edges I could fall off. So the next evening, I packed a flashlight, a voice recorder, and a thermos of coffee, and I went back to the stairs. I sat at the base as the sun sank behind the ridge, watching the shadows lengthen and pool around the lowest step. The forest went quiet in that particular way it does before dark, as though every animal was holding its breath. At exactly the moment the last sliver of sun disappeared, I heard it. A sound from above, from the empty air above the 12th step. It was a footstep, not a branch snapping or an animal rustling. A human footstep, deliberate and weighty, landing on stone. I looked up and saw nothing. Empty sky fading to purple. Another step, slower this time. Closer. Whatever was walking was coming downstairs I could not see. Each footfall landed in perfect rhythm, unhurried, like someone descending a very long staircase, 10, 20, 100 steps below the visible world. Step, step, step. The air grew cold, not gradually, but instantly, as though I'd walked into a freezer. Frost began to form on the grass at my feet. I scrambled backward, grabbed my flashlight, and shone it up the stairs. The beam cut through the darkness and illuminated nothing, just stone and air. But the footsteps continued, descending step by step. I counted them. 11, 12, then a 13th footfall, landing not on empty air but on the actual 12th step of the actual stairs. Something was now standing on the top step. I couldn't see it. The flashlight beam passed through where it should have been, but I could feel it, a presence, heavy and patient, observing me from above. The temperature dropped another 5 degrees. My breath turned to fog. And then I heard a voice. It didn't come through my ears. It arrived directly in my skull, bypassing sound altogether. "You asked what we are. Ask me now." The words were ancient, layered like many voices speaking in unison, slightly out of sync. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I felt the pressure of its attention like a weight on my chest. "Ask," it said again, and this time the word carried something like impatience, like pressure building behind a dam. What are you?" I whispered. The forest held its breath. "We are the ones who climbed," the voice said. "We are the ones who kept climbing when the stairs ran out." A pause. "We are still climbing." The thing on the steps began to descend. I still couldn't see it, but I could track its progress by the footsteps, by the patch of deepening cold that moved down the staircase. Each step brought a wave of nausea and a ringing in my ears. At the 7th step, I caught a flicker at the edge of vision. A shape that wasn't quite shape, a darkness darker than the night around it. Roughly human, but wrong in every proportion. Too tall, too thin. Its head tilted at an angle that suggested curiosity or hunger. "You can see us," it said. "That is rare. That is useful." I knew then that I had two choices, climb or run. And I knew, with the certainty that comes only from true terror, that if I ran, I would spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, feeling that presence at the edge of my perception, never truly safe again. The thing on the stairs had stopped at the 4th step, waiting. "What happens if I climb?" I asked. The cold intensified. "You become one of us," it said. "You climb forever through a darkness that has no ground, no sky, no end. You forget your name, your face, your life above. But you see everything. You see the true shape of the world we walk beneath. The roots, the bones, the things that were buried and should have stayed buried." I didn't climb. I'm not brave. I picked up my flashlight and I ran. I crashed through the dark forest, branches tearing at my face, my ankle twisting on roots, the cold presence following me, always at the same distance, never gaining but never falling behind. I burst through the cabin door at a dead sprint, locked it, and stood with my back against the wood, gasping. The footsteps stopped at the edge of the clearing. I heard them pause. Then, from the darkness beyond my windows, the voice returned, softer now, almost gentle. "The stairs will be here tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. They have been here for a very long time. We have all the time in the world." That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't gone back to the ridge. But the stairs are not the kind of thing you can leave behind. I see them when I close my eyes. I hear footsteps on gravel paths, in the creak of floorboards, in the settling of the cabin at night. And every evening at dusk, the temperature in the clearing drops. Just a few degrees, but I notice. I've started leaving the porch light on. I've started sleeping with the radio playing. The silence is the worst part, the way the forest goes still when the sun touches the horizon, as though something is listening for my next move. Tonight, I walked to the edge of the property line, just to see if they were still there. They are. The stairs stand silent in the moonlight, and I could swear there are more steps now than there were before. I counted from a distance, 14 steps now. It started with 12. The ascender's steps are growing, reaching upward, and I wonder, when they reach 15 or 20 or 100, will they finally touch the world they're reaching for? Or will they keep climbing, like the voices said, forever, into a darkness that remembers every person who ever stood at the bottom and decided not to climb. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I dream of stairs, endless stairs ascending through a black void, and somewhere above me, below me, around me, footsteps, always footsteps, closer than before. In the dream, I'm always climbing, my bare feet on cold stone, and I can't stop, and I don't want to stop, because I know that the moment I stop moving, something behind me will catch up. Last night, I woke at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of a footstep on the cabin porch. Just one. I lay frozen in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart beating so loud I couldn't hear anything else. When I finally worked up the courage to look, the porch was empty. But the porch light was off, and I always leave it on. In the morning, I found a single footprint in the dirt beneath the window. It was the print of a bare foot, but the toes were wrong. There were too many, and they faced backward, as though whatever left it had been walking out of the world, not into it. The stairs in the woods are waiting. They grew again last night. I can see the new steps from my window, silhouetted against the rising sun. 15 steps now, and I have the terrible feeling that they're learning to walk on flat ground.